Hello again, and welcome back to Better Living Concepts Book Club. We are in the middle of David Wolfe's book, The Sunfood Diet Success System. We're on lesson 15. And my name is Ryan. This is my wife, Janine. And this particular lesson is all about hybrid foods. And you can imagine with hybrid foods, that's something that we don't really want. We want to remain in the natural state. But it's a short lesson, so let's kind of dive right in and we'll go from there. Okay. Lesson 15, Hybrid Food. Some philosophers, such as the great writer, translator, and thinker Edmond Bordeaux-Zakelli, believe humans were once a frugivorous creature, but have been altered due to centuries of unnatural feeding. However, it is not humanity's biological form which has changed. It is the food itself which has been altered and hybridized. When the earliest humans first began cultivating crops and fruit trees, they unwittingly also began to protect these crops and fruit trees from natural selection, which, as we have seen in Lesson 9, Origins, does occur within a species, but cannot create a species. The cultivated crops were cross-bred for better taste, longer durability, stronger skins, etc., yet at the same time were growing genetically weaker as the unfittest strains were allowed to survive as long as they tasted better or lasted longer. Eventually, certain crops and fruit trees were grown for so long in protective environments away from the wild nature that they no longer had sufficient genetic energy to survive in wild nature untended. These foods I have termed hybrid foods. Hybrid foods are foods that will not grow in nature. My colleague, Dr. David Jubb, tells us that hybrid foods are missing vital electrics. They are foods which must be nurtured and protected by humans, or else they will be overcome by birds, insects, worms, fungi, and bacteria. Most fruits sold in large supermarkets are crossbred and hybridized to some degree, but are still excellent foods. Often they are still capable of reverting back to a wild or semi-wild state. Fruits such as avocados, cherimoyas, jalapeno peppers, and tomatoes are great examples of these. As a general guideline, fruits which have been hybridized too far include all seedless fruits or fruits with non-viable seeds. These fruits should be avoided because they are genetically altered and weak. Also, grafted trees produce awkward fruit, often without seeds. Grafting is a process apparently developed by the Chinese whereby one variety of fruit tree is united to another variety of the same fruit tree. Many varieties of orange trees are actually two trees in one. The root stock is of a totally different variety than the stem and branches. Again, focus on the seeds. If they do not exist or are not viable, then avoid those fruits. The biblical verse, Genesis 1:29, actually warns of the danger of hybrid foods. The verse advises us to eat only herbs bearing seed and fruits bearing seed. Seedless foods are so hybridized they can no longer reproduce. The inability of hybrids to reproduce stems from a deficiency in the procreative cells. Hybrids can lack a double set of chromosomes in their reproductive cells, and this leads to an inability to produce viable seeds. Common hybrid fruits, grafted fruits, or fruits grown from cuttings include seedless apples, bananas, most common date varieties, kiwis, their black seeds are not viable, seedless pineapples, seedless citrus fruits, seedless grapes or raisins, seedless persimmons, and seedless watermelons. The standard bananas we all know are excessively hybridized foods. I was raised on bananas and this was difficult for me to accept. The black seeds found in the common banana are not seeds at all, but are non-viable remnants of what should be semi-hard, pellet-sized, walnut-tasting seeds. I transitioned away from bananas by eating fewer and fewer until I finally let them go. Hybrid fruit is not only unnaturally high in sugar, but it is also low in minerals. I have noticed that I can eat super sweet wild berries in massive abundance and get no unusual reaction or high at all. I have also noticed that if I eat a mildly sweet hybrid fruit, I get a weird reaction from just a small amount. Seedless grapes send me into la la land, which is a sugar high. Hybrid foods are devoid of the proper mineral balance all wild foods contain. Excessive hybrid fruit consumption leads to mineral deficiencies. It's not only that hybrid fruits and sweet starchy vegetables such as carrots, beets, and potatoes themselves are unbalanced in minerals. It's that an overconsumption of hybrid sweet fruit and sweet starchy vegetables causes the body to bring heavy minerals from the bones into the blood to buffer the hybrid sugar, which is not completely recognized and dealt with by the liver and pancreas. The minerals and the sugar are then spilled off into the urine. So, in the long term, hybrid sweet fruit and sweet starchy vegetables can actually overstimulate you, causing you to lose minerals. Common hybrid vegetables include beets, carrots, corn, and potatoes. Most of the vegetation people eat is not found growing wildly in nature. The fields in which they grow are protected from natural forces. The natural insects are poisoned with pesticides. The soil microbes are poisoned with fertilizers. Crops grown chemically are artificial. Their cultivation is unnatural. Common brown and white rice varieties are hybrids. Commercial oats, barley, and wheat are hybrid plants. Common controversial alfalfa sprouts, often criticized for containing toxins, are hybrid foods. Clover sprouts are a better, more natural choice and should be chosen over alfalfa. Most commercially viable legumes are hybrids. I once grew lentils from seeds in wild survival of the fittest fashion. Only one of 100 grew to fruition. When I harvested the lentils from that one plant, each lentil displayed an amazingly beautiful design on the seed surface, totally unlike the dull orange-brown lentils available from the store. Amazingly, the lentil plant had reverted back to its natural wild state. Many primitive peoples and all wild primates eat foods from at least 100 varieties of plants. The majority of the world's population now, on civilization's various diets, consume only 13 varieties of plants: bananas, beans, beets or beet-derived sugar, corn, oranges, potatoes, rice, wheat, soybeans, sugarcane, sweet potato, cassava, and coconut. The first 9 of these 13 listed are such hybridized foods or genetically modified that they are either seedless or produce seeds incapable of surviving independently in nature. Due to the deficiencies of nutrients in hybrid foods, this situation presents an enormous health challenge for the world, and yet it also presents a tremendous opportunity to improve the health of the world. People become addicted to bread, corn chips, French fries, baked potatoes, and even carrot juice because these foods come from hybridized plants that contain an additive quantity of sugar and a low level of minerals. I have noticed that hybrid foods are attacked by different forms of fungi than wild food. Hybrid foods are much more susceptible to early decay. For example, I can have extremely hybridized yellow seedless grapefruits outside in my back patio in the sun alongside seeded ruby red grapefruits. The ruby reds, though not a wild strain, will last months out there as they ripen to perfection. Citrus ripens best in the sun, on the ground. However, the yellow seedless grapefruits will be overcome by bright to dark green mold outlined by white. You will never see this type of mold attack a wild fruit. From these types of observations, it is clear how hybrid fruit can feed fungal conditions in the body, such as candida, whereas non-hybrid or wild fruit does not trigger such a condition. How to make hybrids work for you. Hybrid foods are everywhere, and most of us still need to eat something. It is possible for you to make hybrid foods work for you. The effects of hybrid foods on the body are usually not felt physically or consciously until one is significantly purified after many months and years on a pure diet. Remember, start where you are now. When I started on raw foods, I was probably eating 90% hybridized food. My health dramatically improved when I shifted my choices. I realized that I could not thrive on hybridized foods, grafted foods, and foods grown from cuttings. Over time, I learned to fine-tune my diet and body to achieve an extraordinary level of health. Hybrid fruits and vegetables may be eaten in small amounts. Mixing bananas with fat, such as avocados, nuts, and olives, lessens the sugar effect on that fruit on the system. Eating more green leaf vegetables and avocados, nuts, or olives with hybrid sweet fruits or vegetables will decrease their effect on the blood sugar and increase the utility of elements in the food. Hybrid grains may be eaten straight or sprouted. Even if hybridized, whenever possible, eat food grown locally, indigenously under the sun, under truly organic conditions. Eat food that is in season. I have noticed that I can eat dates in abundance, up to 30 in a day if I'm extremely active, when they are in season, fall and winter. But when I eat dates out of season, they give me a strange reaction similar to the feeling of eating too much hybrid fruit, and I cannot even eat 2 or 3 dates. Importantly, non-hybridized wild foods are available when you look closely. These valuable foods include all seaweeds, blue-green algae, wild bee pollen, wild honey, and of course all food substances found growing wildly in nature. Action steps. Hybrid food. 1. Identify the hybridized foods, raw or cooked, in your diet. Decide to replace these foods with more natural foods as soon and as often as possible. Particularly watch out for foods high in sugar and low in minerals. 2. The solution to hybridized food? Grow your own food from heirloom seeds. Contact heirloom seed banks through the internet. Also, whenever possible, eat wild plants and fruits. And 3. Participate in hands-on class in the field with a local herbalist. A magnificent Kirlian photograph of a wild malva leaf. Malva leaves are one of nature's great delicacies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he did it again. Mm-hmm. Another short chapter with great information, and yeah.
Wow, I was amazed at how many fruits are hybridized.
Yes.
Right? It's like amazing. So, like bananas, I mean, I was thinking bananas were, safe to eat, but here we need to be careful. In fact, he's cut them out of his diet
altogether,
right?
Even the organic version.
Yeah.
Right. So
when I was a kid, the bananas did have darker seeds in them.
Wow.
And I guess over time they've kind of just disappeared. But that was just really kind of interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see, what else really kind of stuck out to me? The Genesis 1:29 actually warns of the danger of hybrid foods, he says, because the Bible advises us to eat only herbs bearing seed and fruits bearing seed. Yeah.
And of course, if they're not bearing seed, even though they were originally designed to be bearing seed, then they've obviously been altered, and you're going to lose a lot of what that brings to the fruit itself, that whole process. Yeah.
And it's got to affect human beings.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you'd think it would affect human beings' reproductive system if that's the case.
Oh, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah. So much to learn there, I'm sure, in the future. Yes, so all of those fruits that, we think are just healthy and good to eat, maybe not.
Even the organic version,
yeah.
Right? So, I mean, while I think he espouses that if we're going to buy from the supermarket, that we should buy organic as much as we can, because that's the best of the bunch. But even if you can't buy organic, you're still better off buying raw and eating raw from the grocery store. But
so hybrid foods are devoid of the proper mineral balance of all wild foods contain, leading to mineral deficiencies in terms of the sugar and whatnot. That was interesting. Causes the body to bring heavy minerals from the bones into the blood to buffer the hybrid sugar, which is not completely recognized and dealt with by the liver and the pancreas.
That's huge.
Yeah. Talking about oats and barley and wheat being hybrid. Alfalfa sprouts, you think those are great, but recommending clover instead. And then talking about that many primitive peoples and all wild primates eat foods from at least 100 varieties of plants.
Wow.
And that we're really down to about 13.
Interesting.
Yeah. I thought that was kind of wild. People become addicted to bread, corn chips, French fries, baked potatoes, even carrot juice, because these foods come from hybridized plants that contain an addictive quantity of sugar.
It's incredible how addictive these things are.
Yeah.
You know, even though they're taking out, they're removing, in a way, elements of the food itself, but yet that makes it more addictive.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It is. It is. Well, and then, of course, the concept of them being attacked, the plant itself being more susceptible, to fungus. And
which is why they need more and more pesticides and fungicides or whatever, right? That's why they need these things, because they're more susceptible to the attack.
Yes. Just a vicious.
Terrible cycle.
Let's see, how to make hybrids work for you. I think that's kind of what you were mentioning before in terms of start where you are now, he says, right?
Right.
When he started, he was about 90% hybridized foods, but he's dramatically changed that over time. He's fine-tuned his diet to achieve an extraordinary level of health.
I thought it was interesting too, and he mentioned it here, I think but definitely earlier in the book, where he talks about the time that it takes to purify your body. And so it can take several months, if not a year or two, of being very consistent with eating raw and really purifying your body. But once you get to that state, and then you go back and you eat something, from a non-pure position, then you can feel the difference. I mean, so there's going to be that gradual purification process, but well worth it.
I guess so. It just seems like it's going to be such a challenge.
Well, that's what life is.
Yeah.
Right? That's how we improve the quality of our lives.
Okay, yeah.
Those are the better living concepts.
Mixing bananas with fat lessens the sugar effect.
Interesting.
Right? Avocados, nuts, olives.
Well, that probably harkens back to his triangle thing, right?
Yes. And even if hybridized, whenever possible, eat food grown locally, indigenously under the sun, under truly organic conditions.
Right.
Eat food that's in season. So that seasonal chart was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
He talks about, eating the dates. At one point, when they're out of season, they gave him a strange reaction. But if they're in season, he can, tends to be able to absorb more.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That kind of speaks to the fact that the body goes through those cycles as well. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So maybe your body is in that season at the same time the fruits are in that season.
Interesting.
Right?
So what happens if you're you're in a winter climate, right? A colder climate, and you fly to Hawaii for
That's an interesting question.
Which I think is what he does.
I think we should try that experiment. I'll go to Hawaii.
Yeah. Okay. So then he talks, of course, about seaweeds, wild bee pollen, and algae that are found grown naturally in nature.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else? Yeah, so I mean, really how they started out in the first place becoming hybridized, right?
Well, I don't know how deep in the weeds anybody wants to get on this, but if you do a deep dive on this whole process, there's a lot of folk out there that talk about why this started happening, and it's really about greed. I think was a big driving factor in hybridizing of food, being able to push fruit beyond the scope of what they are supposed to produce naturally, so that they can make them available year-round, so that they can make more of them or whatever. I don't know exactly all that, but and that just created this vicious cycle.
Yeah.
they all went down.
So cultivated crops cross-bred for better taste, longer durability, stronger skins.
Right.
At the same time, they're growing genetically weaker.
Right. That's the point.
As the unfittest strains were allowed to survive as long as they tasted better or lasted longer.
Mm.
And eventually certain crops and fruit trees were grown for so long in protective environments away from wild nature that they no longer had sufficient genetic energy to survive in the wild as nature intended.
Just as a side note,
Yeah.
just regarding what you're talking about there, think of the zoo
Uh-huh.
and the animals that are stuck in the zoo.
Oh.
Those that are born in the zoo, that are raised in that protected environment, it's very challenging and difficult to release them into the wild.
Yes.
Same thing.
Yeah.
You know, whenever you take something that's organic and that is designed to be a certain way and you begin to alter it, it never gets better.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way to improve upon that which was created in its best form already. It's amazing.
Yeah, interesting. So action steps for this one.
Yeah.
Identify the hybridized foods. Particularly look out for foods that are high in sugar and low in minerals. Grow your own food from heirloom seeds.
Yeah. The other side of that too is if you're like maybe you're living in an apartment and it's you don't really have room, you can do some inside growing of sprouts and things like that. But
Clover.
yeah, exactly. If that is where you are, I would highly recommend getting to know some of your local farmers and maybe trying to buy direct from them or what have you. That might be a good way to go.
Wow, great chapter.
Yeah,
Great
short,
lesson.
sweet, powerful as always. And of course that second after growing your own food, obviously it begins to talk about the wherever possible eat wild plants and fruits,
which will be the next one.
which
right?
is the next lesson,
Yeah.
lesson 16. So join us again for lesson 16, which is wild foods. I'm looking forward to that chapter. And so, yeah, anything final you want to share?
Participate in a hands-on class in the field with a local herbalist.
Nice. We need to find one.
Yeah.
Nice. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time for Better Living Concepts Book Club. Until then,